Hey there, Zack Henderson here. What you are about to see is a workshop that we just gave here at Whole Strength CrossFit here in South Nashville. We really got hands-on and into the details with the staff here at the box and also some of their competing athletes. So what you're about to see is a deep dive into some of the fundamentals like the deadlift, the swing, the one-handed swing, the clean, and then also some of my current thoughts around programming, how to progress and regress with certain techniques, and really what I hope comes through more than anything else is just the prevailing attitude that I have around strength training, which is that it should be fun, it should be focused, and you should leave the gym every day with something in your pocket that you can work on and improve for the next time. Enjoy. So with that, we're gonna get right into it. So the first thing that I like to do with like almost every workout is to start with some sort of breathing practice. You guys are all familiar with diaphragmatic breathing. So what I thought would be cool to get started with is a 90-90 diaphragmatic breathing drill. So if possible, we'll grab a piece of wall. If not, that's fine. But here's the goal. And if you want to take your shoes off, I've been told taking your shoes off is okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So here's what we're going to do. I like to think about this as creating a clean slate for your physical practice. You know, we're at the desk all day, we're in the car all day, we're generally like, yeah, kind of bringing this kind of attitude into the gym a lot of times. You know, it is what it is. But regardless of whether you're going to like destroy it or whether you're going to go into a yoga class or whatever, I think it's always helpful to just take a second to pause. So one of the things that we're going for here with this 90-90 breathing drill against the wall is the idea is to line up the pelvic floor with the diaphragm, which is why we're going to be laying on the floor so that we can even all that out. Hopefully I don't break this pack right off the bat. So 90-90 being 90 degrees from the knees, 90 degrees approximately at the hip. You can be a little bit deeper, that's totally fine. But all we're gonna do is breathe in deep through the nose, expand the belly. You guys all know these principles of diaphragmatic breathing. We're gonna push gently into the wall with the feet. We're gonna curl slightly down, essentially so that we've got the hamstrings and adductors slightly engaged. And we're just gonna chill here. Breath through the nose, big belly. What I'm gonna cue you to do after like the first minute or so is to start adding some overhead movement, as long as that feels okay for your shoulders there. But not very complicated to get started. So find a piece of wall. You can also just throw your feet up in midair. That's totally fine. I'm going to put 2 minutes on the clock, and we're just going to breathe. So again, you're just thinking about nice neutral pelvis, relaxing the low back into the floor, relaxing your shoulders. If you guys are familiar with like the 360-degree circumferential breathing idea, you can kind of stick your thumbs into your obliques and you can like push your obliques out as you inhale. You not only want to think about breathing so that your belly is sticking out, but you also want to think about your belly expanding outwards laterally as well. All right, guys, now if you want to add the overhead component, you can kind of plug your fingers into the sky and start to let your thumbs come down to the floor behind you. And again, the idea here is just to kind of keep your rib and spine position in the same spot. you guys all have what looks like pretty good overhead mobility. It's looking good. Again, just keep that breath. And then kick yourself away, and we'll do dead bugs. So you know the drill, that's alternating left and right arm and leg. You can do these with bent arm and bent knee, straight arm, straight knee. Doesn't matter too much to me, as long as you're just kind of tapping into your core engagement here. Alrighty guys, finish up with just a couple more reps and then we'll pop on up. All right. All right guys, so to continue our warm up here, we're going to do a 3 exercise sequence that is detailed in the Simple and Sinister book. Has anybody read that? I know it's in your office because I have X-ray vision. My spidey sense was tingling. I was like, there's a kettlebell book in here.
It is, I forgot.
I could smell it. Yes, so Simple and Sinister is a fantastic book to check out, peruse. They actually just came out with a new edition, but a lot of stuff that we're going to be going over today is kind of like built off of a lot of the stuff that's in that book. So, you guys familiar with halos? You guys familiar with goblet squats? So grab yourself a light to moderate weight that you would feel comfortable doing halos and goblet squats with. All right, so this here is the Simple and Sinister warm-up. So we're going from the top down. So we're going to start with the halo. Ideally, we kind of want to have the intention of turning every exercise into as much of a full body exercise as possible. So that really just starts with whatever you're doing. Make sure you're rooted through the feet. Your quads, glutes, and abs are engaged. And we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and take your kettlebell. We'll hold it upside down here by the horns. That's at the base of the handle there. Now we're just gonna briefly pause at each position that we're going for here. So we're gonna kick the bell off to the side. So you're kind of like in this, what might be considered like a lumberjack press. So the bell is like right here beside your ear. And then we're gonna go all the way back behind your noggin. All right, right like so. I really like this as like a tricep stretch. So you can keep your elbows close, elbows pointing up to the sky. That's a nice one. And then we're just gonna go off to the other side. All right, so you're vertical there through that arm, through that bottom side arm that is. And right back where you started. So that's a circle, right? Not too complicated, but we wanna make sure we're hitting each one of those positions as we go. We don't just want to throw that sucker around your head super fast. So what I want you guys to do, keep your butt tight. Let's go for 5 circles in each direction. Keep a good tight handle on the bell. Give it a little bit of squeeze into the handle. And once you hit 5, we're going to do 5 on the other side. Staying nice and tall. You know, this should be done with a relatively light weight, but if you got strong shoulders, good mobile shoulders, I like doing this heavy too. It's fun. 50, 60 pounds, you know, work up to it. But heavy halos are fun. All right, 5 each side, everybody good? All right, now we're gonna be going into the prying goblet squat. Everybody familiar with the goblet squat? So the idea with the pry is simply using your elbow to push the inside of your knee out side to side. So see how I'm just kind of leaning out to one side and the other? I like, at least to start, to keep the foot flat. If you want to pop it out, that's fine. But what I also want you to think about here is as you're actively stretching out to that side, I want that knee actively pushing back into your elbow. Does that make sense? So even though you're stretching out, your adductors are engaged and you're pulling in. And then you can actually use your, lateral hip to give yourself a little extra stretch there. So the whole idea behind all that is we want to add muscular engagement to those end ranges of motion. So you can play around with it. Pull, push, with the hip. So experiment with that. Let's go ahead and do 5. So we'll grab a hold of your weight here by the horns. And let me clarify. I don't really know a good way to communicate this. This is grabbing by the horns upside down. This is grabbing by the horns right side up. For our squats, we're going to grab by the horns right side up. Okay? So let's come down. Good squeeze. Push out to one side. Give yourself that little tug of war idea that we were talking about. Push out to the other side. Square yourself back up. Now we're going to add a curl at the bottom. So bring your elbows in. Let the weight come down. Curl back up. Stand up. Everybody good with your weight? Let's do that 4 more times, approximately at that cadence, on your own pace. All right, let's knock them out. Little push to one side, innie and outie, push to the other side, innie and outie. Give yourself a curl and then stand up. You guys all got really good deep hip mobility here. That's not surprising. Curls because we all need bigger armacondas. Yes. And again, once you work up to it and you're really comfortable with your control at the bottom end range of your squat there, you can do these pretty heavy. Pry out, curls. The curl is a lot easier than it looks. So it's kind of fun just doing it with like a super heavy kettlebell because it's like, I don't know. You look really cool in the gym. That's kind of half of the goal here. So that's the prying goblet squat. Everybody feel what I'm saying with the innie and outie? Do you guys do like pseudo isometric end range stuff? Yeah. So if you have clients where it's like throwing a weight in their hands may not be a good idea for this, just have them come down, even if they're like relatively more shallow than like a ATG squat. You can just have them stay here, push in, push out, push in, drive out. Anytime we can just add little extra stuff for your hips to do in that kind of bottom range of motion, the better. Cool? Again, watch for valgus collapse, watch for, I got flat feet, watch for just janky stuff going on with the knee, adjust as necessary. That's another reason why I like the goblet squat is because you can go wide, you can go relatively narrow, it's all in the ballpark. And then if somebody's like, stuck, or they grabbed a bell that was too heavy, you can just drop it and stand up. It's totally fine. In fact, sometimes that's a good exercise for a good drill for people who are starting to get their full range of motion squat is just to work the eccentric. Grab a heavy kettlebell, stay tight, drop it, come up. Drop it, come up. All right, third exercise. We're going to be doing glute bridges. Glute bridges, pretty straightforward. The only thing that we're going to add is a knee squeeze. So you can grab like a yoga block if you have one handy, or a foam roller, or even a pair of shoes. I'm going to snag these nobles here, if you don't mind. Squeeze, slight, what is that, posterior pelvic tilt? right? And squeeze. We really want to make sure that we tighten up here in every position. So before I ever even move, I'm thinking squeeze. 3, 2, 1. Posterior pelvic tilt, engage. 3, 2, 1. Now you notice when you do all that stuff, you're not going to have very much range of motion. And again, for a glute bridge, that's not necessarily the point. We really just want to get your hindquarters fired up. So again, squeeze hard, find your slight pelvic tilt, drive. Let's do that for, let's say, a set of 5. Cool? Yeah, glute bridges are one of my favorite just variations of exercises. I mean, there's a million ways you can hack the glute bridge. Obviously, you've got the squeeze. If you have bands, you can go out the opposite. But tend to feel like a lot of people don't really have good connection with their adductors. And so like, usually the squeeze stuff is a good way to kind of get into those adductors. So, any questions with the halo, squat, or glute bridge?
On the squat, I noticed that you moved your foot, you picked your foot up and turned it out. Is that the optimal thing to do, or?
Great question, great question. The whole idea of having your foot rooted to the ground and being able to maximize tension out and controlled tension in is a very important skill as a weightlifter. And when I say weightlifter, I mean a strength trainee. You know, because you guys talk about rooting through the feet. So that's just like a good drill of rootedness. Now, once you are aware of that and you really know what you're doing, and then you just want to work on mobility, you can just because it feels good. You know, but again, we don't necessarily want to do that before somebody understands the idea of rootedness. Yeah. So they're both perfectly cool. So what we're going to do now is just repeat that sequence one more time on your own. 5 halos each direction. 5 prying goblet squat with a couple curls at the bottom, 1 to 3 curls at the bottom. And then 5 squeeze glute bridges. Cool? Yep, there you go. Yep, the way you can check yourself, oh, look at you guys. The way you can check yourself how you're doing your halo just right is when it's behind you, it's just resting. So you might want to flip that sucker upside down. Yep, so right there, that's a good stretch. If it was the opposite way, like the bell would be up top and kind of bearing down on your hands, as opposed to just being able to let it rest. It doesn't really make that big of a difference, you know? It's still however much it weighs, you know? But especially when you're working with a decently heavy weight and you're really throwing that sucker around, you just want the bottom of that bell to be facing down when it's behind your head. And those 5 squats. There you go. And I didn't catch y'all's names. Nick?
Jenny.
Jenny? Thanks for coming out. Right on. There is also, I think, some benefit to working on these squats a couple inches above the bottom, because you guys are so good, so mobile, that like, I mean, you could sit your rear ends on the floor. So my guess is if you were up a couple inches, that would make it considerably more difficult, and that's probably a good thing. And we'll knock out those bridges. Squeeze the knees, find that pelvic position, lock up tall. Each little step there is important. Of course, single leg bridges is like, you know, once you really have a student who's obviously got, you know, decently mobile hips, they've got good control in this bridge, moving to the single leg is money. I kind of like to move to single leg bridges as much as possible, as soon as possible. And then that opens up a whole another can of worms. All right, so we're gonna move on into the two-handed kettlebell swing. So what I want you guys to do is you guys should probably all grab a bell that is heavier than what you already got. We're first gonna work on deadlifts. All right, so grab a hold of a weight that you feel comfortable honing in your deadlift technique, as well as two-handed swings for, let's say, sets of like 10, if you know what that weight might be for you. Let's try 3 more. Oh, yeah. Stellar. Cool. Textbook. So what are the principles of a good deadlift? Neutral spine, hinging at the hip, little external rotation, loading the hamstrings, timing the hips and shoulders to lock out together, making sure that your abs are on. Lats. All those things are absolutely correct, and those are all the things that we're looking for in a swing as well. A swing is nothing but a deadlift that's going horizontal as opposed to vertical. That's it. So, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that's like the base of the level method, right? So, all that's great. The only thing that I like to tweak with the kettlebell deadlift to kind of prep for swings is making sure that we line the bell up slightly behind where you might normally would. Obviously with a barbell, the barbell is always going to be technically in front of you because it's this way and you're here. The cool thing with a kettlebell, because it's one unit that goes theoretically behind and underneath and in front of you, is that you can get right up under it like so, right? So, as opposed to having the weight right here like how we normally would with a barbell, and that's totally fine, if we bring it here in line with the ankles or the heels, this accomplishes a couple things. One is it helps us get deeper into our lats, which is very, very important because the lats are going to guide the swing. Very important. It's not the arms, it's the lats. It's kind of weird, but that's what we're going to build off of. Number 2, it's going to get you used to hinging a little bit deeper than what you're used to. Some people will even pick up the bell way behind you. Now, granted, this all depends on your hip anatomy, your hip mobility, spine, how well you can kind of brace yourself in neutral. But that's the biggest difference between a barbell deadlift and a kettlebell deadlift, is the barbell is always, just because of the nature of reality, it's going to be in front of you. With a kettlebell, we in general want it directly up under you. So, lats are engaged, shoulders are pulled down to the back pockets, not necessarily pinned back. Pinned back, you're kind of working against, if you've ever seen somebody pull their shoulders way back and they actually grab a hefty deadlift, like your rhomboids can only support so much weight. So if you're a strong deadlifter, that's only going to go so far. So you don't want those shoulders necessarily back because the bar or the kettlebell, in this case, is just going to pull them forward. But instead, you want them neutral and down. Just a little bit. Doesn't have to be dramatic. Right? Pinch the armpits. Right? And you just stand right on up. So the only drawback with a kettlebell with 2 hands on one kettlebell is you're naturally going to have some internal rotation of your shoulder because you have both hands right here in front of you. You know, that's fine. Eventually, you know, when we move on to single arm work, that's where we can really, you know, bring the shoulders back, you know, if we're doing one arm swings and stuff like that. But just for the sake of right now, just understand that a little bit of this is okay. If you have people who are like super duper tight on their form, they're going to be like, that's not a good lockout. Whatever. We're not swinging 500 pounds. You're going to be swinging 106 pounds maximum. All right? So that's totally fine. So bear all those things in mind. Let's see your deadlift. Let's go for a set of 10. And you can experiment with how far back you can kind of push that bell behind you. Yeah, you guys all got stellar deadlifts. Cool. I like the bell back behind your feet. Lots of teaching this to a new person, getting them to understand engaging the lats on the deadlift or pulling from the ground is huge. But that is pretty cool because that kind of forces you to engage like this kind of body. You know what I used to do? I don't do this anymore. I used to take a hand towel. I used to have a client take a hand towel and get into their backswing position. I'm like, you know, this is another good way to cue it. Short stop, deadlift.
Classic CrossFit resting position.
Right.
That's how you got it.
Right. And this is actually another good way to find your lats, is if you actively push against your legs there with straight arms. There's your lats. There they are. And just go ahead and grab down. But like what I was saying, sometimes I used to have people like take a hand towel, they get in their backswing. I'd say short stop, grab a towel, backswing, and then I would literally stand behind them, grab a hold of that towel, and I'd be like, don't let me pull you over. And then when I let go, there was their swing. Imagine doing that in a Lifetime Fitness. So I didn't last very long. So does all that deadlift stuff make sense? Cool. Another thing that I really always like to cue is as much as we all know that like getting your lats turned on is like, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but once you do find them, like you got them. I always want to make sure that you also pair that with pecs. Something that we oftentimes don't think about activating. But just as important as your lats are, you also want to think about engaging through your pec. So when you're doing swings, when you're doing deadlifts, any of this hip hinge stuff, it's just as important to engage through your pec as it is through your lat, because don't forget, like, they both come up to the same spot. Right? So that's another good way, just like how I say, your arms are just guiding. The real work is being done by your lats and actually your pecs. Now let's move on to the swing. I like to start getting people into the swing by just practicing the hike pass. The hike pass is just stepping an arm's length away from your bell, cock it back, throw the bell high and tight, and set. So you're using lats, triceps, technically pecs to tighten up, throw it back, and then set it right back down. Does that make sense? You're keeping your hip hinge position, sweep, and down. Let's try that for, let's just say 5 or 6. No need to do a bunch of these. These will kind of challenge your back endurance here a little bit. Just think about throwing high and tight into the groin and then set right back down where you found it. It's harder than it looks. This is all looking pretty good here, guys. Making sure you keep your feet rooted. This is just something that just keep an eye on. Whenever you see somebody who's like, whoa, 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 up on your feet there, I mean, it's perfectly fine. We're throwing a kettlebell around. But we want to make sure that we get that gripping the ground intention, and we keep that. Because if you're lifting weights and like, well, you're here, oh, you're here, doesn't really bode well. All right, and we really want to make sure that we're always filling gaps with strength and stability and not relying on momentum with like any of our lifts. Only other thing that I want to be sure just that you coaches keep an eye out on with the hike pass is watch for the hip rising. I am as guilty of this as anybody. So that looks like this. I'm dramatizing it a little bit, but that's the idea. As opposed to this. Make sense? Because if you load this hip like so, and then you come up, well, now you're imagine just doing a deadlift like this. Some people, that's maybe how they deadlift, but you're losing that hinge. It's like a bow and arrow. So we want to make sure that we have this horizontal movement, this horizontal displacement of the hip back so that it can produce force forward. If we have a shallow hip hinge because our butt raises, well, then what's producing the movement? Your back. So does the hike pass make sense? There's a bunch of ways to hack the hike pass. Just another really quick one is just the drag deadlift. You can have someone start like this and just pull, stand. That's another good one, especially if you're doing it like with a super heavy weight. Do a couple of those drag deadlifts and then a lighter hike pass. It's another good way to hack it. Who's got a good, confident two-hand swing? All right, man, let's see it. Let's do 6. Nice. Nice set. Nice set. How'd it feel? Okay. We want our swings to feel fantastic. Every single time we do a set of swings. We don't just want our swings to feel okay. If you want to feel okay, you can go to Planet Fitness if you want to feel okay. If you want to feel like a boss and get a set of hamstrings, you've got to be feeling a little bit better than that about our swings. It was very, very good. Coaches or competitors, anybody else in the room, anything that you saw that we just went over that you want to take a note of? Yep, those are the 2 things I saw. As soon as you hit your hike, you went whoop, and then you went whoop. Again, now that you know, now you can work on it. So again, watch the height, watch the toes. Let's try another set of 6.
He's the king of self-correction. This should be awesome.
Nice. Cool, man. A little bit better. The hip thing takes a lot of work. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. The more you kind of break down your swing, the more you'll be able to feel the difference. But it's kind of like, have you guys ever felt like that your second deadlift in a set, your second, your third is better than your first? Huh? Every time, right? Every time. Because there's something about the hip hinge that's self-correcting when you have an active eccentric. Does that make sense? That's the bugaboo about deadlifts and swings, is because they start from a dead stop. There is no eccentric before the concentric. With your squats, you have an active eccentric. With your deadlifts, you do not. That's why it's such a unique exercise, is because you're pulling from a dead stop. But once you do your first one and you set it down, active eccentric, your next one feels much better. So the trick with a lot of this hip hinge stuff is to get your setup just right so that your first one feels as good as any other repetition. That's a lot of what we're going over here today. So that's always why we start with the deadlift too, even when we're talking about swings. Because when we bear all these things in mind, short stop position, lats, rooting through the feet, these are all the things that we have to manufacture internally before we ever touch the weight. Again, because we're starting from the dead stop. We're starting from no momentum. Make sense? All right, so let's all just do a set of 10. Great swings, guys. Cool. Who has a major question about their swing? So what you're asking is, should the initial hike pass be initiated with a higher hip because you have a higher hip hinge when you're actually swinging? So why should it be different?
Yeah.
Great question. Because it's starting off the floor. So when we're actually swinging, again, we don't have to worry about reaching to the ground for the kettlebell. Unfortunately, we do when we're initiating the set. And that also brings up the concept of you could actually elevate the kettlebell for your swing. Like, you can actually stack the kettlebell on top of a 45-pound plate or a couple of 45-pound plates, because not everybody, it's not appropriate for everybody to get down this low. You know? So if you had the time and the patience, I would probably start most people with an elevated swing in that manner. Does everybody know what I'm saying? Do you guys do like rack pulls or elevated deadlifts? Because it's an arbitrary thing. The height of the barbell and the height of the kettlebell is arbitrary. A guy like me, who's the tallest person in this room? A guy like me and a guy like Nick, it doesn't really make sense that we both have the optimal hip hinge setup. Like, anybody who's taller than like 5'10" should probably at least start their deadlift practice from plates. I don't have very far to go. Other people do. But that's the short answer is, you just got to be a little bit deeper because you got to pull it off the floor. And the floor is pretty far away. Because again, if you are higher, if you were to kind of start with that higher hip, you've got a long leverage. You've got a long arc to pull. And honestly, if your lats are strong enough and you're skilled enough and the weight's just right, you probably could start off with that higher hip hinge position. But it becomes tricky because when we're actually swinging, we actually don't begin the hips back position until the bell is right here, which is directly up under us, and we're not having to search for it. That's why we can get away with a higher hip. There's no leverage on the back. If you guys saw my last post, this does put leverage on the back because you're beginning your hip hinge back when the kettlebell's out here. Wait for it to be here, there's no leverage on the back. But when it's out here, there is. Whew. An issue with the back, like if your back feels like it's blowing up on the swings, a couple things are probably at play. Number one, the most common thing is they're hinging too soon. whoop, and then they make up for it. Second most common thing is they're going too low, and those two things kind of go hand in hand. Like the squatty swing. And then third, you might just have, which is very, very common, people who don't know how to squeeze their hindquarters and their hamstrings without blowing up their back. It's very subtle. But when you have somebody who's like super stressed out, they work a desk job, they're sitting down all day in front of a computer just getting pissed off for 8 hours, and then they come in and then they, you want to lift weights. Yeah, all they're doing is lifting with their back. That's why we start off with 90-90 breathing. We start off with dead bugs. So we start off with, loosen up our hips, starting off with the hip bridge. If somebody has a strong hip bridge, they're like, nope, I don't feel it all in my back. Like, okay. If you got somebody in that kind of hip bridge and they got it all in glutes and hamstrings, theoretically, they know how to stay out of their low back. But that's a good test. It's like, hey, John, when you do those glute bridges, do you feel it at all in your back? The answer is probably yes. So you can use a lot of these warm-up drills as remedial ways to kind of get back into the intention of what we want to work. You also see people who just hyperextend. I mean, that's another common one. When that happens, I just put my hand right here, so just stand up straight. And if I say start doing your, let's actually do this. You have a really good swing. Let's go to the center here. Yeah, man. So just stand up tall and straight right here. So I'm just going to put my hand, or if I had a clipboard or a foam roller, I'll just put my hand like so. And so your goal is at the top of your swing just to lightly touch my hands, right? All right, let's do it.
How many?
Oh, let's do 5. Hopefully my hand doesn't move.
I need it raised, so I can't.
You're actually right. Good. Squeeze your butt tight. Tight. 2 and 1. Good. Nice. Do you feel a little bit of a difference between the reps where you hit my hand versus the reps where you lightly touched it? They were all really good, so maybe not. Yeah. A lot.
How much I touched your hand, but not anything
Yeah.
else.
Well, the only difference is how far you lean back. So even with something that looks like picture perfect, even if it's just a couple inches worth, that could make all the difference. So oftentimes, we can get people to really clean up their swings by actively not making contact, if that kind of makes sense. So even though I said just touch lightly or whatever, if I had moved my hand back just a little bit and was like, just don't touch it at all, and you just barely felt it, you'd be like, damn. So that's another good way, just to double check where somebody is. So when you're in the throes, when you're in the heat of the moment in a Metcon, everything's going fast and furious. Yes, we still do want to take into consideration a lot of the finer, technique points. So if that means raising the kettlebell for someone who has that perfect hinge when it's a little bit raised versus taking the risk of somebody moving a little bit too far, then yeah, have it raised. A 45-pound plate, 1 or 2, you might need to give them a little special spot, but there's no reason, regardless of rest time, regardless of repetitions, regardless of the nature of the workout, there's really no good reason why we shouldn't make every concession for somebody's safety and for somebody's optimal movement. So in the same way that you can elevate somebody's deadlift for any reason, you can also elevate their swing. You just want to make sure that they don't crash the kettlebell into whatever you have it on. Who's got a good two-handed swing? I mean, one-handed swing.
I don't know why I've
You got it right.
Cool. Solid. Nice. The thumb down, thumb up, it's kind of that's a little bit of a gear voice sport concept. You guys familiar with GS Sport? You guys know in Russia, like, they don't run marathons. They swing kettlebells for thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions.
I have a friend that plays that.
Yeah. And they snatch and they clean and jerk, right? Actually, they don't really swing. In gear voice sport, it's all snatches and jerks. But that's a little bit of a GS technique, and that's fine. It's just that's not a style that I am well versed in. So I really just can't speak to that too much. But what I can say is that one of the reasonings why, and again, we're not doing millions of reps. We're not going for endurance. We're going for like power and strength. So what I kind of like to do is, again, in the interest of keeping that lat and not lose it, get it, lose it, get it. Not to say that's the case, but for someone who doesn't know any better, that's what's happening. Because we get this one arm free, we can stay a little bit more square. So when we really stay tight in that lat, usually what I like to recommend is a 45-degree diagonal or straight on. Usually 45-degree helps people get into their lats a little bit more. And with this, I don't have to change anything. Try that.
I noticed that you were bringing the other hand with you on the swing. Is that a technique thing or just a preference thing?
Yeah, so two things with your free hand. You can either shadow. So when the working hand goes back, free hand goes back, you can shadow. Or you can bring your free hand into a guard position. This again helps square you up. The only thing that you don't want is just a floppy free side. So just give it something to do. Two and one. Nice. Sweet. Looks good. Everybody comfortable with one-handed swings? Let's see 10 per side if you're comfortable. Let's say 6 to 10 per side. Got to keep you guys hot, keep you guys warm. Now would probably be a good time to address breathing. Breathing is a big old can of worms. There's a couple different ways I like to go about it. So let's see, let's just do a set of 6 just on one hand.
This arm thing is new for me.
Solid. Cool. Nice. Looks good. You 3 should probably never swing a bell that light. That's just all I'm going to say about that. Just saying. You know, and I'm not saying that because like just trying to be like macho or whatever, but like part of the swing is weight selection. Like if you swing too light, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So let's swing this and actually do your hike pass. See a set of 6. There we go. There we go. Nice. Good hinge. Yeah.
That is a third of my body weight, so it's probably.
Much better. Yeah, 30% is about what you want for most of your practice. Cool. So, looks really great. Obviously, this whole thing with your free hands is going to take a little bit of practice. But when you dial it in just right, that's going to make that thing feel weightless. So when we're talking about breathing, let's actually time your breathing with the swing. So I want you to try here is breathing in through the nose on the backswing and out through the mouth as your hip is extending, like this. Let's give it a shot. Let's say maybe 6 with your other side. Remember your hike pass? Great swing. Great. Nice. Good. You will see everybody do this. You will say, breathe out with your hip extension. And nobody will do it. Nobody will do it. Not singling you out. Everybody does this.
It should be.
With the hip. Everybody likes to finish the hip and then exhale. It's such a subtle difference. But when you're doing a 5-minute snatch test, that's the only way you're going to get through it looking like a professional. Because you'll see everybody do this. And they exhale as they're locking out overhead. Ooh, dicey. Dicey. At the moment where you want to be like most engaged through your whole body, you're, and when you start getting fatigued, that's how the snatch becomes more of a shoulder exercise and less of a hip exercise, because you're not maximizing the hip. So let's try that one more time. Breathe with the hip. There you go. Get that other arm involved. Back up. Back up. 3, 2, there you go. 1. Good. You guys see the difference? All right. We're going to practice this just one more time. A lot of us have some chicken necking going on at the top. Try to be aware, high crown. These are all things that I spent years training out of. I'm going to do one chicken neck and then the rest I'm going to try to do better. Does that make sense? Think high crown. Let's try 5 to 8 per side. Good. Nice, guys. Swings are looking better every set. There you go. Good. All right, guys. You know, one of the main principles, a lot of the swing stuff, you just see a lot of extra stuff going on with people's swings. Whether they're too squatty or, you know, you've got sometimes some double knee bend, which isn't that bad because that's another GS method. Then you got raising of the arm, chicken necking, leaning back. More often than not, cleaning up the swing is a matter of doing less. You're doing too much. Do less. It's like surfing. What's that movie? Forgetting Sarah Marshall. You're doing too much. Do less. Nope, even less. Nope, you're doing too much. Pop up. Nope, pop back down. Isn't that what he said? So when someone has a squatty swing, they're bending their knees too much, what do? That's a great question, because it happens like all the time. Couple things. One is I would take them back to the deadlift. You know, just people don't like to trust their hips. People trust their knees. People trust their legs, but they do not trust their hips. I believe that's a societal thing. I won't go down that rabbit hole. But I don't believe people trust their hips. You know who's got a great swing? People who can salsa dance. They trust their hips. So that's a big thing. Got to get them out of there thinking about their knees, get them into thinking about their hips. So going back to the deadlift, going back to the short stop position. Now what you can also do is do a partner active eccentric swing. Has anybody seen this? No. I just posted about this on Instagram. This is a great drill. It's a fantastic drill, and I'm glad you brought it up, because otherwise we would have skipped over this. So what I want you to do is, for right now, we'll do this two-handed. I'm going to have you start doing a set of swings, and then I'm going to stand off to the side. I'm going to throw the bell back to you. So what I'm going to be doing is adding to gravity, hence the active or overspeed eccentric. And what you'll find is people will get out the way because it's coming down super fast. And to be fair, this happens half the time. Half the time it works, half the time it doesn't. That's pretty good odds. People will catch the bell with their hips. So when you're throwing it back, people aren't going to go down. It's just going to like pop off the floor. More often than not, they go back. So let's try it. We'll say two-handed. And this is another time where like somebody's swinging too light. See how high she's swinging? If she was swinging about twice that heavy, it wouldn't be coming up so high. That's why you have a handy training partner.
Okay.
No, keep going, keep going. Squeeze your butt. All right, now. Pop it to me. Pop it to me. 3, 2, 1, and relax.
Okay.
Did you feel your
I did.
hip hinge a little bit more on that one?
Yeah, I did.
That's how you should feel swinging the 32 kilo.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Because all I'm doing is adding to gravity. And again, that's why I say like you need to swing something with heft. Because otherwise you can get away with a lot of that nonsense. Like with a heavy bell, you can't get away with a squatty swing without really messing yourself up.
Yes.
And either you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to figure it out.
Yes.
Have you ever swung 32 kilo before?
Yes.
Let's see it. So, knock him out. Good. Keep going. Keep going. Don't swing so high.
Okay. Oh, shoot.
Oh, no, you're good. You okay?
Yep.
All right. Now, don't swing so high. Squeeze your butt tight. 4, 3, 2, 1. There you go.
I know they're starting so high because on the level method, they say go to eye level.
Uh-huh.
Is that still eye level like right here, or is that too high?
You can swing up to high level without using your arms. Like if it's a light enough bell and you're really going for it, yeah. More often than not, you will see people using their arms. But under the right guidance and coaching, people can still go that high with just their hips. The main reason that I don't like it is because not only maybe are you using your shoulders, you see looseness, you see slack in the arms. You see your elbows start bending, and also your armpit angle has opened. When your armpit angle has opened, unless you're a stud, you have lost your lats.
Okay. So if we're in class and like we see people swinging, like I see a lot of this.
All the time, yeah.
T-Rex arms.
Yeah.
T-Rex arms aren't necessarily bad. The only thing that T-Rex arms do is they shorten the arc. Now again, here's where we're starting to, and this is why it can sometimes be an interesting conversation with CrossFit. There's a difference between training and competition, or building strength and endurance and power versus expressing strength, endurance, and power. If you want to do 100 swings in 30 seconds, you're going to do this. If you want to actually train your swing, so we talked about the lats, we talked about the pecs, triceps are in there too. Part of a good swing is a good strong tricep. Again, because if we're loose here through the chain, it's just not as good as it could be. But if so, yeah. So I would just say encourage people to use their triceps. That might be a way that you can communicate that. Use your triceps. Okay. All right, guys. Real quick, hand to hands. Obviously, practice this a lot before you have to do it in the context of a Metcon or a workout. What I recommend is gliding your catching hand over your working hand, just like that. You see a lot of people who just kind of whoop, like juggling. You want to keep it close. You want to slide this hand directly over to catch, and that will mitigate any nonsense here. So. Hear that slide? Listen. And if it goes wrong, whoops, whoops, there we go. Whoops, there we go. By using that technique, you still have a hand on it in case you don't make a clean transition. You can just try it again. You guys want to try that? Give it a shot.
So that way there's no
Overlap?
overlap and there's no margin for error. I don't know if that's wrong or right.
Show me.
So it's more like,
Oh, I gotcha.
so that way I'm like holding on to it.
Yep, keep your eyes forward. Yeah, I gotcha.
You know
That's,
what I'm saying?
yeah,
I don't
that's
know if it's
nifty.
wrong or right.
That's nifty. So, in the case of the clean, we're going to start from the actual rack position. Has everybody seen my little infographic on Instagram? This is bad, this is good. That's it. So, let's all get up into your rack position, and we're just going to come around and take a look. Solid. Solid. Looks good. Tuck that elbow just a little bit. Tuck that elbow just a little bit. Solid. Looks good. Looks good. Right on, guys. What are you feeling when you're holding this rack position? And relax. Cool. Let's try that same position on the other side. You might find that it feels a little different one side versus the other. Close. There you go. We really want to connect. See how it just feels weird on one side?
It does,
Yeah, it's come down just a little bit. Good, good. Nice. Looks good, guys. Sometimes those competition bells can be a little wacky. And relax, guys. All right, so that's your rack position. Principles of the rack. You're balanced on your feet. Not too much on your toes, not too much on your heels. Again, we're starting from like the ground up. We got to make sure that we consider every point in your kinetic chain here. Quads and glutes are on. Ribs are stacked over pelvis. Just like how we did 90-90. You're not leaning. You're not kicking out forward. You're stacked. When you're stacked, you can absorb the weight into your skeleton. That's the goal behind a lot of strength training. You're not lifting weights. You're absorbing the weight into your skeleton and you're moving. The elbow is down. You want the elbow kind of pointing towards this hip bone. Again, this is a chicken wing. Not bad if you want to like, for some reason, if you have to do this, I don't really have a good excuse. Maybe if you want to like readjust like your grip here, but tuck down. Okay? So, your oblique, your abs, supporting this arm. The bell is in the cradle of the arm. Your shoulder is down. The bell is deep into the palm of the hand. Any questions here? Okay? Rack holds, rack walks, great exercise. Okay, so that's how we're ending the clean. It's tricky because we're going from like this swing position and we're ending up here. Okay, so when we're doing the clean from the top down, we're going to start with the clean drop. So from this rack position, we're going to drop the weight directly down the midline of the body, and we're going to use our lats and triceps to push it back into the backswing. Make sense? And then we're going to set it down. We're just practicing the drop. I'm going to demonstrate 2 or 3 reps, and then we're all going to try it. Just going to use 2 hands to clean. Try this side. Right down the center of the body. Now, did you guys hear that slide? What that was is that was a handle going from here to my fingertips. You don't want to catch here in the meat of the callus. You want to catch such that the handle is on top of the callus, not behind it and pinching. Make sense? All right, so let's bring your weights on up, either side. Doesn't matter to me. Establish your rack nice and tall. Widen out the feet in your swing stance. Drop it right down the center of the body as you catch with the fingers. Push it into the backswing and then set it down. Let's do 3 reps.
Can't push it.
3 reps per side. Stay tall, get out of the way at the last second.
So I'm bringing this down.
Mm-hmm. Better. Boom, there you go. Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Get out of the way at the last second. Like literally almost hit yourself with it.
Right.
Boom, there you go. You got to master this before you master the pass and the snatch, because we're doing the same thing with the overhead snatch. You got to pass from the base of the hand to the fingers. So if you can't get it here, I don't want you trying it up here. So, just like how we were talking about, stay tall. Stay tall. Everybody's tendency is to hip hinge early with all this stuff. Stay tall, play chicken with the weight, get out of the way at the last second. tall, out. I'm gonna do a couple cleans in a row. Watch how I get out of the way at the last second. Notice how I open my hands? I'm like, let's go for it. I'm not death gripping it. I'm like, away we go. Trust yourself to catch it in the fingers. Trust. Trust. Because you have to. You might lose it a couple times, but you're never going to master that transition until you go for it. Because it's in free fall. You're not really controlling it on the way down. Same thing with the snatch. You're controlling the trajectory, but all you're doing is passing from here to there. And I'm waiting, 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 catch. Be cognizant of your calluses here. If you want to, let's try this again. You can go from the dead stop, or you can try re-cleaning from the swing. Does that make sense? You can try re-cleaning from here, and then just get it back into the backswing. What you can also do is swing in between. Swing, clean. Swing, clean. Swing, clean. To be fair, if you want to swap that out with another kettlebell, you can, because the size of these competition bells isn't great. If you want to. If it's comfortable, then go for it. Yeah. So for like the next 2 or 3 minutes, I just want you guys to practice any or all those variations. Think about zipping your coat. Whoop, zip your coat. There you go. It might be tricky. Your muscles might be too big, and I'm not being sarcastic. See if you can get that down a little bit. Is that hard?
It's a little trickier, but
Yeah.
Joey's too jacked.
Try to end there.
Like this.
Uh-huh.
And then,
Smooth.
yeah, that is better.
Smooth. Keep your mind in your hips. Relax. Your first 3 were perfect.
Yeah. Not sure what changed.
First 3 were perfect. So a little bit of banging is going to happen, but the trick is to keep the weight close. It can't knock into you if it doesn't travel forward in the first place. So in slow motion, it's like there's a wall 2 inches in front of me. Whoop. Sometimes, well, probably really wouldn't want to do it in here, but sometimes you can get people to like practice their cleans up against a wall. It's like, okay, like to keep this, and then you can say, all right, once you get this, because theoretically, the bell is never going in front of you. Then when they do that, then you can do the same thing with snatches, if you really trust the person. See how it just goes right out there? It's because I'm keeping my mind in my hips and my lats, not my shoulders and arms. There we go. Snatch. Here's my word of caution on the snatch. Nobody should be snatching until their swings and cleans have been dialed in for like probably a couple months. And then even on top of that, you want to make sure you're doing all the other overhead work before you really start getting in the snatch. So we're just going to practice this a little bit, because honestly, today we're just going to clean up a couple things, and it's either there or it's not. You want your snatch practice to be short. If you're practicing your snatch technique for more than like 5 minutes, you're probably just going to end up with either bruised arm or missing skin. So you got that to look forward to. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the snatch from the top down. So what I might recommend is that you clean your bell up any way you choose. Use 2 hands or clean it like so. And press it up overhead. Okay? So let's start here. Let's see your overhead position.
Is that fine to wear, Rob?
Yep. Everybody's overhead position looks pretty good. What happens if you open your fingers? Do you feel like it's secure? Good. Bring it down. Let's try the same thing with the other side. Feel secure? Feel secure? Pretty good. And down. All right. So, again, same thing when you're at the top. If I haven't made this abundantly clear, you want the handle deep into the heel of your hand, like so. Most of you guys look like you had that position down pretty good. You know, this is one of the reasons why kettlebells are so interesting. The weight, the center of the weight is behind your arm. It's actually behind and below your hands. Even though you're supporting it, obviously, with the hand here, the weight is actually down and behind. This creates a very unique and interesting training effect when you're doing presses, when you're doing snatches, cleans, anytime the bell's in this rack position. It's kind of hard to describe, but essentially you really want to be thinking about where is that center of the bell going. A lot of times we can get so wrapped up in like the handle and the hand and you know, trying to over grip it and all this other stuff. And the really interesting thing is that at the end of the day, you're really moving the center of that mass behind and below your hand. So you don't really have the control over it like you do a dumbbell or a barbell. Does that make sense? This is one of the reasons why I like the snatches and the cleans with a kettlebell is just a little bit different than a barbell. So again, when you guys are overhead like so, the reason I had you open your hand is because if you're relying on your grip, that's not good. You don't have to open your hand at the top of a snatch, but it's a good way to kind of just check and see like where you're balanced. As you were coming down, that bell rotated on you. That happens. That happens. What you also have to consider is where the center of the mass on that bell is resting on the back of your arm. And honestly, I could pontificate and talk about that all day, but it's something that you got to feel. It's got to be aligned, and it's going to look different for every person and with every bell. The different sizes of the bells, the different styles, you're all going to have a slightly different position of where it's resting and the angle on the back of your arm. All I can offer is just don't be afraid to take your free hand and just scooch around. Just scooch around. To the point where if my hand is open, it should be secure here. It should be secure here, 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 and here. If suddenly you get to this one angle and the sucker takes you into an arm bar, adjust accordingly. And that's why a snatch can pull you out of alignment just like that. Just like that. That's why everything has to be aligned just so. I'm sorry. The snatch negative. One more time. See how I still do that same open hand, catch with the finger idea? Catch it into the backswing, set it down. Let's try 3 to 5 per side. This drill is to practice the descent. So if you're doing the opposite, maybe in the context of an actual class, somebody who's still working on their technique, you can, I can do that one. You can snatch up and then bring it down into the rack. Make sense? But that drill comes after the drop. Because again, we're working on the eccentric first. Because if you can get the eccentric, the concentric's gonna be 80% taken care of. Everybody trains at the opposite. Same principle with the clean. Notice how close I keep the weight to my body. I'm not letting it go out. If I was wearing a hat, I'd be thinking about taking my hat off. So that's why we do the eccentric first. We do the eccentric first because the pattern is the same. The pattern is the same on the way down as it is on the way up. The trajectory, I should say. So that's why we do the eccentric first, so that we can practice the full range of motion without the bang. That's why we do that with the clean as well, so we can practice the pattern without the impact. So if you have somebody who has a picture-perfect eccentric, they keep it close, they're still probably going to knock their arm a couple of times when they go back up. But the learning curve will be way shorter. Way, way, way shorter. So that's number one. Practice more of the eccentric. If you're doing it in the context of a workout, eccentric down, clean and press up. Or clean and push press. But again, if you can't press the weight, probably shouldn't be snatching it. The other thing that I would suggest is to sometimes you can just have people stop here at like what's kind of called like a high pull position. Again, it's not a barbell high pull, which was called something else, but that's where you could just literally do the snatch without the lockout. I don't like doing that too much because it's a little too reminiscent of this, like sloppy swings. But if you can get somebody who stays in their lats and can be kind of relaxed up here, that's it. So it's weightless. Another thing is, go back to the one-hand swing. If you got somebody who's got a great one-hand swing with a 32, they got the hips that can move a 32. They've got the hips that'll snatch a 16. It's kind of, you know, there's kind of that progression there. That's why I like the fact that kettlebells only come in certain sizes, because I kind of know, okay, if you can two-hand swing this, you can one-hand swing that. If you can one-hand swing that, I know you can clean this. If you can press that, I'm comfortable with you snatching XYZ. And the more you have an eye for this stuff, the more you can kind of put those pieces together. You know, and that's what the level method basically has built into it. If this, then that. So, yeah, it's a matter of trusting yourself, keeping it close. Some impact will happen, but if you've done your due diligence and you've had somebody practice holding this overhead position for long periods of time, you guys do like overhead walks. If you say, hey, move your kettlebell around. Make sure it's in exactly the right spot where you want it. All right, coach. Make sure that that's how it looks. Make sure you can keep your hands open. That's another good kind of like rule of thumb, is if somebody can like walk around for 30 seconds, like so, or do a Turkish get-up with a weight, then, well, you know, within the get-up, they end in this position. You start lying down, and you end up like so. If you trust that somebody can handle a weight like this, that's got to be a prerequisite to actually snatching it. And then just loads of practice. That's why really I only recommend that you practice in little chunks at a time. 5 minutes. Coach, it feels great. Awesome. Stop. Coach, I don't know, it's bruising my arm. Stop. Like, you want high frequency, short duration practice, especially for the snatch. All that makes sense?
Honestly, I've heard a tip. I like holding it out here like this.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, like almost just thinking about like twisting it around versus like up and over. Is that a fine
Yeah.
thing to kind of describe it?
Yeah. Yeah. The only tricky thing is that will work when you have the right combination of anatomy and kettlebell.
Okay.
You know, some kettlebell handles are like that thing. The corner of that kettlebell and the corner of that kettlebell are fundamentally different.
Okay.
And that's a fine way to train it. And actually, like when I'm doing you guys are familiar with the 5-minute snatch test. Well, you got it on the board, right? That's something we got to do for Strong First. I will, just to switch up the wear pattern on my hands, I'll snatch on pinky side, then I'll snatch on thumb side, then I'll snatch in the middle, and I'll kind of go back and forth. And once you get really tight on all this stuff, like, you'll actually spare some fatigue of your muscles doing it that way. It's very subtle. But once you get like really good at it and you're doing like, you know, you're doing a bunch of reps, those little adjustments there can help. But in general, I like that. That's fine. That's cool. As long as that overhead pattern is rock steady. But in general, I also like to be able to see that the student can snatch with the hand directly in the middle. Because when you go to one side and the other, it changes that angle. And they just have to know, you have to know how that angle affects the lockout. But yeah, that's totally cool. This is the one thing that I really wanted to show you guys. It's like a great quote unquote warm up for the Turkish get up. It's called the prisoner get back ups. So get your weights out of the way real fast. All right, so you know how like the get up is like super regimented? Like every little step has like a thing. It's a whole exercise into and of itself. A lot of people don't have the patience for any of that nonsense. A lot of people just want to move around. And half of the benefit of the get up is getting down and up off the floor, right? So let's really get the kettlebells out of the way. Like, you guys should probably be okay. So the get back ups are a great way to either A, warm up for the get up, or B, if you don't have a lot of time or you have like some students who don't have much patience, this is a fun one. So we'll all start from standing. Okay, now the goal here is to get down onto either your back or your belly and get back up any way you so choose, but follow the rule that we're gonna stick a hand somewhere and you're not gonna be able to move it. Show you what I mean. Let's put our right hand behind your head, and your right hand will not move from that position. Now I want you to get down on your belly and get back up without moving that hands. As fast as you can. Pause. Switch your hands. Get down onto your back and get back up as fast as you can. Good. Now put both hands across the chest. Get down onto your back and get back up. Woo! Hands behind your back. Down onto your belly and back up. You never know when this might come in handy. Right hand to left knee. Get down on your right side and get back up. And opposite. Down and up. Let's see. Hands cross to opposite knees on your back and get back up. Nice, guys. Last one. Right hand to left foot on your back and get back up. We should have started with this. And opposite. On your back and get back up. Whoa, very good, guys. All right. Those are the Dan John get back ups. Great way to warm up, you know. The idea is just to super glue one hand, two hands to anywhere on your body. Can't move it. On your face, on your back, on your side. You can get super creative, all right? You can do it. This is a fun one. Hands on your butt, you know. So, that's my favorite way to warm up for the Turkish get-up. It's my favorite way to warm up, period. So, if you have like basically anybody who's over the age of 30, this is probably something that they should do like all the time. Because father time does not bode well for the person who can get back up in a speedy manner after they have taken a spill.
You have children. That's pretty regular.
There you go. There you go. All right, guys. So the bottom's up. So just like how I was saying, with the way that the kettlebell is constructed is very unique because we have the center of mass that's 6 to 8 inches removed from your actual handle. Obviously, that's the reason why kettlebell is so great for the swing, because it adds this extra leverage, it adds this extra, you know, pull forward. It's the reason it's so cool and interesting for our overhead work, because the actual mass is resting behind and below the hand. The bottoms up position is where we really take advantage of the shape and the design of the kettlebell, because now this weight is going to be vertically displaced directly above our grip. Is everybody familiar with the bottoms up position? Okay, so I'm going to show you how I like to set up for the basic clean, bottoms up clean. And hey, you know what, from a programming standpoint, if you've got like Kettlebell Cleans in the workout and you got somebody who's like, I'm banging my forearm, I'm all over the place, the bottoms up clean is a great option. You're going to grab it pistol grip. The handle is parallel to the body, perpendicular to the body. You're going to lean on it just a little bit. And basically, as long as you feel like you could theoretically do a push-up off of that weight, you're solid. If you're like this, or whoa, that's obviously not good. Tight pistol grip, lean on it, engage that lat, cock it back. We're gonna do a back swing just like how we do in a regular one-handed swing. Keep your free hand handy. You wanna protect your face. And we're gonna pop it right on up. Back swing, stand, and balance. You're locked up, tall and tight, keeping an eye on the weight, keeping your free hand close. Let's see it. Guys, I want you to challenge yourself a little bit on this weight. I kind of want it to be hard. I want it to be a little bit difficult. Woohoo! There you go. Nice, guys. All right, guys, so that bottoms up clean is like, it's just one of my most favorite exercises. It's an exercise in going from ballistic to stable, which is just what we're doing with the clean, just what we're doing with the snatch. Forces you to pay attention. Forces your obliques to work. Forces you to coordinate grip, biceps, well, your whole arm, your rotator cuff, your lats, the whole 9 yards. Also want to make sure, again, focus on what your butt's doing. You can kind of muscle up a light to moderate weight just on grip strength alone. But this is not a grip exercise. This is not a grip exercise. Now, when you first start, you definitely want that good hard grip, obviously. All right? But I'm actually barely gripping it. Make sense? Your fingers are just there for like the last 5%. Everything else is how it lands in your grip, or how it's balanced in the base of your hand, and what everything else in your body is doing. If you're loose through the hips, sucker's gonna fall. If you're tight, if you're rooted, if you're breathing, this is just a great way to check all those boxes. It's a great self-limiting exercise, right? It's all that feedback is immediate. Okay? If you're not engaged, it's gonna fall on you. If you just take a little extra time to focus on what you're doing, it's rock steady. Keep that in mind. Let's try it again. If you dare, you can add a little pointer finger. Only if you're super confident. Only if your butt's tight. Only if you're respecting the weight. And only if you keep an eye on it. So, bottoms up clean and carry is a great one. If you're a super stud and you want like your rotator cuffs are good, all right? You don't have like a tear or whatever, but you're like a big old snatcher, clean and jerker. The bottoms up should be a big part of your prep. Should be a big part of your warm up. It's one of the best things you can do for your rotator cuff. All right? Finding your lats. Finding your engagement. You can do a little, one of the things I like to do is like a little, you guys know like the Arnold press? You can do like a little Arnold press. All right, if you can get that rotation out, that'll help you find your lats. Now, you asked about elbow angle. Obviously, to start, you want this close. Like this is like tucked in. This is like position number 1. Position number 2 is just out, disconnected a little bit. Position 3 is parallel to the floor. This is what everybody should own before you do a press. Tricep parallel to the floor. If you don't feel your oblique on that side really activating when you got that parallel position, you're not paying attention. Let's try that. Take a light weight, try the external rotation if you want, try the 90-degree with the elbow there. Keep an eye on it. Keep your breath. Good. Keep an eye on it. What's your butt doing? What are your abs doing? Are you maintaining your breath? Mm-hmm. Nice. When it's wiggling and you're like, I don't really got it, that's your new goal. If this is all shaky, then you're not engaging. You're not tightening up. And the cool thing is like you can't really coach it. You just say, pop it up and see how you feel. And you let your students feel it out. We don't need to over cue every little position. Instead, I think we should only cue the positions that we are confident will let our students feel the correct muscles working. Everybody's anatomy is different. My rotation is not the same as your rotation. My squat and my deadlift is not the same as your squat and deadlifts. Our bodies are different, positions will be different. We should put position secondary to muscles. Feeling the muscles, all right? That could land a little bit differently, like with different coaches and whatnot, and it certainly depends on the exercise that you're doing. But I don't care how you do a pull-up, as long as you can really feel your lats working. That's kind of one of the most important things. Similarly, like with kettlebell stuff, I can be super detail-oriented and anal about kettlebell technique, but what I want you guys to understand with all this technique stuff is it's only a starting point to help you find how your body responds, what modifications you can use with yourself and with your students in order to get those right muscles working. Going all the way back down to the breathing. If there's one thing that we should probably all do somewhat similarly, it's breathing. Apart from that, it's kind of like anything goes. There's lots of room for interpretation. With all this stuff, think about where your feet are at. It's hard to get in touch with the muscles if you're up on your toes. You're coming up off your heels. So a lot of this stuff that I'm getting after you guys about technique-wise is not so much that it's like right or wrong, but that it opens the door for you to get in better touch with what is actually going on in your body. Don't want to throw too much out at you, but we want to make sure that we're setting you up in the best way where you can feel comfortable and confident in what you're doing so that you can hack it yourself. And that's why, like with the snatch and the clean stuff, that's why we start from the top and go down. So you can practice the pattern without worrying about everything else. So with the bottoms up, that's how we start. With the clean, with this position, the last thing that we're going to go over is the bottoms up squat. So with the bottoms up squat, one of my favorite exercises, probably would recommend that you keep a decently close elbow angle here. Again, if you don't feel your abs working in the squat, just say, hey Sally, pick up this kettlebell upside down and give it a shot, and then let me know how it feels. So that's what we're gonna end on. Let's try 3 to 5 bottoms up squats, each hands, and we'll wrap up from there. You know what I'm really glad that none of you guys really do? Nobody is a lip biter in here. You see a lot of people train like this. I mean, Ryan does it a little bit, but not bad. But yeah, don't bite your mouth. So any questions on bottoms up stuff? You know what else I should mention on these? Just one little extra tip, one little extra hack. See if you can divorce your breathing pattern from your movement pattern. This is a little bit of an advanced thing. It's not what I recommend for beginners. But we always say breathe in, brace, exhale on your way up, like for squat or anything like that. Obviously that has its time and place, but you guys are all advanced athletes in here. One thing that I have found very illuminating is to begin to divorce, probably isn't the right word. Make your breathing pattern and your movement pattern independent. And the bottoms up squat is a great way to start to do this. I'm gonna breathe a little bit loud so you can kind of hear the pattern, but so that's slow, right? But what if I just did inhale all the way down and exhale all the way up? Now what if I did the opposite? And everything in between. That's another great way that you can begin to fill these gaps in your movement patterns, your core engagement, how you're aligning yourself, how you're able to keep yourself breathing during exercise. So that's one last little bonus tip there for you, is experiment with some of that stuff. Experiment with the speed of your movement, experiment with the pattern and the speed of your breath. Cool, guys, that's all I got for you today. Good work.